Script by Joseph and Marisha Cautilli. Based on a short story novella by Joseph Cautilli, Marisha Cautilli, and Peter Kim. Director and producer, Roma Gray. Executive producer credits, Marisha and Joseph Cautilli. Narrated by Joshua Banks and Shanalee Carton. Neon green and yellow lights flash on the solar glass of the vacuum tube rail. Its bullet train soars through the city center. Towering glass buildings incorporate solar glass to provide almost all of their energy. Sky gardens intersperse green spaces to promote natural airflow in buildings while providing shade in social areas. From inside the vacuum's train's central car, amid its glow of yellow vapor lights, Rosa Hernandez stares at the 91-foot 4-inch high and 186-foot 4-inch wide 28 million pixel television, watching Crosstalk. As Genius of Love by Tom Tom Club calmly provides ambience on the train's speakers, some pride crosses Rosa's mind as she realizes it is her show, and she worked hard for it. She snickers as she in the video lands several intellectual blows on her opponent, Michael Storm Buckley III, in their weekly debate. Getting on the air certainly came with sacrifices, as she was forced by producers to give her spiked, bright orange hawk up for a soft green one. Still, to get her message out about injustice and inequity in society, she feels it a fair trade-off. Working on the episodes is not as easy as some would think. She must do her homework and know the issues. Her debate style is a mix of intellect and emotion, while her partner is more one of triggering her and going on vast emotional rants. As with most propaganda, his goal is to make the audience not think, but to just feel. If he can get them to experience rage, then Buckley easily wins the day. Today, like most days, she holds her own, and then some. In more of the debates, her style proves the winner. However, she would occasionally lose some ground. She gazes at the mistakes she already made, as the show was previously taped, and cringes knowing it is coming.
Maybe you should check your privilege on that one.
She tells Michael she had used the line before, and the first rule of multiple debates is never to use the same line twice. The reason is simple. After the debates are over, people tend to review their strong points and how they could have answered. Repeating a line? Well, it is like lobbing a slow ball in baseball. One time could catch the opponent off guard. They would swear to never let it happen again. I did check my privilege, and that is why I am angry. He places air quotes around privilege. My privilege is to work all my life and have to pay from a third to half my money to the government, state, local, and federal for over 17 years of my work life. I am privileged to have to pay that amount for the rest of my damn life. Why? So some H-squid addicts can get housing first. He gets a home at my expense and drugs to boot. Here's an idea. Maybe the addicts should check their decision-making. Or better yet, social good hearts should drop these inane policies. All the time, you speak of empathy. He points at her. She takes a deep breath. Who has empathy for me and the other hard-working people who get up and drag themselves into work? Hell, punk rock queen, when I was struggling to make rent and pay my bills, no one was rushing in for me to get free housing so I could neglect my kids and shoot some more H-squid. I can see why the people are mass killing the dealers in what the media has dubbed the Vigilante War. You keep trying to replace the culture, but maybe it just doesn't need replacement. Maybe they need to learn to work. Instead, you have the government playing codependent. Score 1 point for him. The round had not gone well. Her eyes glitter, but she has a return volley.
No one is replacing culture. You really misuse the word. Culture is the product of a society. It's arts and music. Hell, even the buildings of the past are preserved, or at least coded by the AI at the point of their original location, to augmented reality, to be reviewed when the desire strikes us. Even those plantations, where horrific things occurred, that you love so much, and the girls choose to marry at.
Rosa raises a hand to stop Michael from interrupting.
So the truth is, they are still there. And not apartments for the poor, no. It is the practices of the culture that need to be replaced. And they are replaced all the time. We don't ride in carriages and upgrade our horse saddles. We change practices so society advances. Besides, I think you are most interested in getting rid of some of the structural problems that weigh on people's necks, so they could climb and pay more in taxes, and then you would not have to.
Maybe we just want respect for what we have done.
Maybe you should try giving respect to others first, and they will respect you.
She's getting started, but the time for the show is up. On the train, Rosa thinks back to how her producer, Steve Smith, told her to start wrapping up. With a practical sigh, Rosa starts her normal ending, but Michael cuts in. I wanted to say, there is one privilege I have that I have not mentioned.
What the hell are you doing?
In Rosa's mind, the rules are good, and in the end, the battle is over. She shoots him a glare. He smiles.
Stick to the rules.
After all, they are part of the structure that makes them both have trust in the show. She goes to interrupt. I have had the privilege of being married to the most incredible woman I have ever met for the last 10 years. She's stuck through my rigidness and has brought joy to my life. Thank you, Rosa. And to our viewers, I am happy to say we are getting a much-needed anniversary vacation together this weekend. A tear fills Rosa's eye. Quickly, she wipes it with her left index finger before it takes down her mascara. She always wipes with the left hand because the right one is bionic, and she does not like how it feels on her skin.
I'm looking forward to the time away as well.
She smiles and the screen cuts to the next show. The bullet train passes over a group of low-rising buildings designed to allow more light to reach the green streets. Rosa had a part in the green streets. She would be the first to say that it was a small one, but that is just what happens when you are a part of a team. She and some of her punk friends took the streets to protest the high-rise projects the city wanted to introduce some 7 years prior. In this section, water filtration, solid services, automated technology, and native landscaping dominate. Back in the tube, Rosa places her hand on her husband's black, parted hair. She strokes it softly. He could be very rigid, and indeed even pig-headed, but her life would be empty without him. Unlike his on-stage persona, he was warm and deeply caring. In 2 hours, they would be at 6 Mile Island, a smart island designed with room to breathe. It is a place of both safety and comfort. The computer system management would ensure that their refrigerators are full and their walking in the streets is safe. The costs for their resort suite are just a little over their budget, but it is well worth it, especially the old intergenerational housing, which give a sense of small community. Slowly, Rosa kisses his forehead. 3 hours later, Lieutenant Schaefer sits pondering the fire his team squelched. He takes a puff of his cigarette. Even Schaefer had to admit, odd, that after 3 hours of fighting a blaze, coughing from the smoke he inhaled, his bold would crave to take a drag from a cigarette. A charred body lies at his feet. 10 years of these gigs, and still he feels numbness and dread looking at the dead. The smell of burnt flesh often made him sick, but the cigarette helped to cover the stench. Then he notices the scorch marks. "Get over here, Captain Gore. This is going to the fire commissioner. Roll the body first and check for bullet holes." "But I thought we only do that in election years when we don't like the DA or mayor, to get the voter riled up to have him replaced." "Don't be a smartass." Schaefer rolls the body over. He searches and finds one wound in the head and one in the stomach. Good call. So, this is the police's headache? Guess so. Good. Behind a computer desk sits Lieutenant Jane Uprose in her wrinkled uniform. A 5'6" blonde with a lanky body type. She had been on the 6 Mile Island police force for a solid decade. Her wife was angry with her for her lack of advancement and overcommitment to the job. Before, she had failed the captain's test twice. The worst part of it all was she had to raise 2 kids from in vitro on the lieutenant's salary. Not that she complained. She was good at making ends meet and ensuring the kids could attend a private Christian academy. Other people had it much worse than they did, but she'd love to have just a bit of the good life. She'd even considered buying one of those new fancy electric self-driving cars, but quickly realized the payment plan was beyond her means. Captain Bradley waltzes by her desk and dropped a file on it. "Homicide, disguised as a fire. The firefighters rolled the body and found bullet holes."
Really? It's an election year already?
Jane quickly picks up the file. The captain chuckles.
Oh, I'll look into it.
"Body is a male, about 35 years old. DNA says this one is a celebrity. Michael Storm McNear Buckley III.
The guy from Crosstalk?
Yeah, that's the guy.
My wife's a huge fan of the show. She really likes the guy. She loves his values."
A puzzled expression plasters Captain Bradley's face.
What can I say? I married the last lesbian conservative out there. Good lady, though. Nice and proper. She doesn't like the lady on it, no siree. You know, his wife, Rosa. I always say she seems like a nice lady, but my Karen, she barks and says no way. That woman is always trying to start trouble.
Well then, she'll be incredibly pleased when you catch his killer. Grabbing her black leather Prada suit jacket, she steps from her desk.
On it, right away, Captain. I'll check the security camera footage in the neighborhood and see what it turns up.
Scared and alone, Rosa crouches in a dark alley. Rain pours from the heavens.
This is bad. This is bad. I need the cops. And Michael is dead. Michael is dead.
The weight of the truth crushes her spirit. Her husband was killed right in front of her. Her world had ended. Why? Who could have done this? Was it just an attic they walked in on? Why were there two of them? She had the film on her cell when they walked in.
Maybe the police will know the murderers.
Hyperventilating, she tries to calm her nerves. Her eyes fall on where the bullet had scraped the skin off her wrist and exposed the glistening metallic rods and wires under the faux flesh. Her fingers briefly press and yank the scratched material sticking out to cover, but it just unglues. The sound of ruffling branches echoes in the street. Footfalls approach the alley. Worried it was her assailant, she dashes into the darkness. At one of the local shops up the street from the fire, Jane reviews security footage. She bites her lip, rewinds, and studies the images again.
The captain's not gonna like this one. And the paperwork is gonna be a killer.
The scene is clear. In the footage, Rosa, the victim's wife, darts out a double French door and throws something that appears like a gun into the bushes.
Hey, shopkeep. Thanks. I'll be gone now. Need to check the bushes around the place.
Jane leaps into her 8-year-old Google Fiat collaboration car and speeds down the road. She arrives at the house and searches around. Another officer approaches her. "What you looking for?"
I got some footage from one of the shops.
Jane has a habit of twisting her neck and running her hand through her hair. As she twists her neck, it distracts the other officer.
Seems like a woman busted out of the house.
Jane shows the footage to the officer and points to the item in the shooter's hand. "You looking for what she tossed into the bushes?"
Yep, you betcha. Pretty clear it was important.
The officer searches with Jane. "Lieutenant, I found it." Jane darts over and stares at the gun. Slapping on a pair of gloves, the officer bends, picks up the gun, and drops it into an evidence bag. Jane nods furiously. "I better call it in."
Yeah, you do that. Run it for prints. Does it have a serial number?
"No, ma'am. It's been scratched off."
Odd. It suggests a planned kill, and not something heat of passion. Was she a psycho chick with a plan? Does not strike me as such. But you never know. See if the ballistics match any other kills in the database.
The officer nods, bags the gun, and pivots toward the patrol car. As the officer leaves, Jane grapples with an odd feeling. Something is off, but she cannot put her finger on what it is. She sits under the tree, next to the bush, and watches the surveillance tape again. Resting after a brief run, a pit wells in Rosa's stomach. This is horrible. Her husband is dead. He was her whole life. She reaches down to her phone to play the video for the 4th time.
It's pretty, but no surprise. You always do the pretty thing.
As she places a hand on his arm and gives a gentle tug, the two waltz up the driveway. "You think I'm boring?"
Now, I never said that.
"So, You just wait until we get back next week. I got the scoop of the century on this Atlanta Vigilante War. I mean, riots breaking out across the world, people taking the law into their own hands, even got a first-hand witness named Margaret. She's ready to go on the record.
Lots of witnesses.
They reach the door, and he places the key in the lock. They stop a minute, and their eyes lock. Not like this. She has the whole story. How it began, and how some young kid was its latest victim. He swings the door open. She continues to film with her camera.
This place is beautiful.
As she pivots to kiss him, a loud shot fires from behind her. Michael doubles over in a wave of blood from the close-range assailant. Panic. Rosa spins, her arms flings up, and manages to hit the gun. Her bent arm at the elbow uppercuts the assailant in the mouth, and something pink flew from it. He staggers back. A second shot goes into the ceiling, but the gun flies out of the assailant's hand. Rosa dives and catches it before it hits the ground. She fires, and the bullet strikes her husband's murderer right in the chest. Blood spews from his mouth. His body is thrown back. Several other shots fire around her. Screaming, she rushes toward the glass back doors and breaks through them on a dead run. Another shot fires behind her, and she flinches as it nips the edge of her phone. The gun slips from her hand, and she flies into the bushes. Sobbing, she darts into the night. Blubbering again, Rosa stops the tape and marches out into the back street.
Get hold of yourself, Rosa. You need to get this to the police.
She goes to send it as an attachment, but the phone does not appear to be able to call or send texts. Panic rises in her. She cannot call friends for help. Watching the tape again, a small smile creeps across Jane's face. She believes she figured it out. On review, it appears the gun flies from the woman's hand, and as she enhances the video and zooms closer, the reason is made apparent. The woman startles and flinches. But why? Jane zooms in closer and replays the tape. Her eyes widen. On the street, Rosa catches a sight of a police officer. She approaches him. "Put your hands in the air." Rosa is startled but complies. Then it happens. The bright light from the street arc lights catches the metal of her wrist and flashes in the officer's eyes. "She's got a weapon."
No! Just my bionic.
The officer and his partner fire on Rosa, terrified. She rolls and tumbles back into the alleyway. She runs in a zigzag pattern around the corner. The cops slowly approach the area, but she is not about to give them a second chance to kill her. She bolts with all the adrenaline flowing in her system.
Need to get away. I gotta hide.
A drone powers up and leaves the top of the police car. It sails behind her and will take time to get to full speed. She hears the whir of the blades. Rosa worries it will try to spray her with tracking nanites. These small devices would be undetectable by a human eye, but would lay on her clothes and allow satellites to track her. She zigs and zags toward a dark alley. Her eyes search for a trash receptacle.
I just can't. Elias están tratando de matarme.
Ellos están tratando de matarme. Ellos están tratando de matarme. Ellos están tratando de matarme.
Sitting under the tree, Jane rises and marches toward the remaining officer. The officer sits with his legs hanging off the patrol vehicle, eating a donut. Just lunch, Lieutenant.
No, don't worry. Go ahead. Don't mind me. I just want to show you something.
The officer nods and takes another bite.
I finally think I know.
Know what?
See?
Jane plays the video from the store camera back. See what?
I know it's hard. I had to watch it myself 8 times. Let me show you again.
She plays the clip again. She throws the gun.
Well, she does that, but let me show you frame by frame.
She plays the clip again, this time in slow motion.
Now, right here.
She points.
Just as Rosa leaves through the door, she takes 3 steps and then she flinches. It is clearly visible on the tape.
The officer's eyes go wide, and he nods. I see it, Lieutenant.
Why do you suppose she flinched like that?
No idea. Something might have hit the cell phone in her hand.
I wonder if someone from inside the house shot at her.
Using his left palm, the officer rubs the side of his face. It could be. Hell, it could be 1,000 things. Maybe a mosquito landed on her arm.
Maybe, but it had to be a pretty big thing. It stops her from a dead run for a brief bit.
Jane searches around a tree, but a small sprinkler system emerges from the ground. It clicks on and soaks her. The other officer snickers.
Look, take another officer after this stops, and explore the trees. See if you find anything.
Okay, whatever you need. It takes 20 minutes, but the officer finds a bullet in the tree. He and the other officer go inside to tell the lieutenant what they found. Inside the burnt-out husk of the house, Jane drops to the floor. We found the bullet. Great call, ma'am. Most people would have missed it in the video. She gets up and drops again. The 2 officers stare at her from the side. What are you up to, Lieutenant? And why is your head tilted to the side?
Oh, nothing really. I was thinking if her husband fired at her, then why was his body facing the bedroom door? Away from the door she ran out of.
Maybe he turned after he fell. Jane shrugs.
It is possible, but there was no gun next to him. She had taken one gun and tossed it.
Jane falls to her knees again on the area, and her arm hits a pile of rubble.
What's this?
It's a small pile of pink, almost putty-looking substance, and 2 feet away from where the body fell. Looks like gum tape.
Gum tape?
Yeah. Jane appears confused. Forensics must have missed it. The officer reaches into his pocket and draws out a small plastic bag and tweezers.
What's it for?
Come on, Lieutenant. The officer sighs with disbelief. You know.
Is it a sex thing?
Her eyes twinkle with a mix of embarrassment and playfulness. Her hand goes to catch her own head as her neck jerks it to the right. No, sir, the officer huffs as if offended by what the detective stated.
No, I don't know.
You put it over the gums. It has stem cells. It acts as a twofold, Lieutenant. It covers the gum to prevent gingivitis, and it nurtures stem cells to regrow the gums. It replaced Gentuit about 5 years ago as the most popular gum treatment.
Oh, yeah. My wife uses that. Interesting stuff. So damn futuristic. Makes me wonder what life was like before all this fancy, high-tech, sciencey stuff.
Before, people's gums receded, and the teeth fell out, Lieutenant.
I guess so. I wonder if... Now, hear me out here. If either the victim or his wife used this stuff.
I'll search the records. It could just be the cleaning lady, and they fell out while cleaning. Stuff is always falling out in tiny bits. When the carrageenan holds it together, it falls apart easily.
Carrageenan? Doesn't that become polygene in the stomach and cause cancer?
Some rat studies on that, but no real proof with people.
Well, look at you, all smart and shit.
I try to keep up on science stuff.
Ah, well, I need to tell the missus to stop using it.
Anyway, great find, ma'am. We can send it to the lab. This stuff gets doused with saliva and they can separate out the original stem cell genes from the saliva and sorta get a genetic makeup for the saliva. This could give us an ID of either one of our existing two people or if there was someone else in the room. After hiding under a trash compactor for 10 minutes, Rosa bolts. Crying and distraught, Rosa runs 10 blocks across the mostly empty alleys of town. Sweat pours over her face, and salt tinges her eyes. The city feels unimaginably vast for an island of just 6 miles in size. Her heart pounds. The area she reaches is covered by a small canopy of trees, through which the harsh neon of city lights breaks through. Meandering for a bit, she mumbles in Spanish about her failure to speak to the officer. Part of her is terrified of what could come next. The rest of her being is overcome with sheer rage brought on by the knowledge the officer was so thoroughly convinced she was dangerous.
¿Cómo podría? ¿Cómo podría?
She wonders out loud. She is a small woman who just experienced an unimaginable trauma. She lost the love of her life, the man who meant everything to her. How could anyone think she was dangerous? She feels so empty, distraught, and scared. She needs protection. She feels helpless and lost, as if the terror inside her would consume her at any second. Worse, she knows the island itself had the power to seek justice.
Ayuda!
She calls out to the cruel universe. Even now, Rosa's mind whirls with visions of police hunter drones, seeking her out for destruction.
Breathe!
She orders herself. In the distance, the sounds of jackhammers and backing up bulldozers and cranes screams of a construction site. Maybe past the consignment ad CBD shop she saw when she and Michael had arrived.
Michael, you left me. You promised you would never leave me.
It was a foolish promise, she knew, one that no one ever can keep, and yet it felt so natural and certain when he told it to her. Michael knew almost no Spanish, but learned a phrase that always caused her blood to boil. Te amo, mi amor. I love you, my love. A simple phrase that meant the world to her.
La vida está vacía sin ti.
Then overhead, she hears the sounds. At first, barely a buzz, but they drew closer. Her heart flutters. Drones. They were after her. Overhead, the drones moved like smoke barely visible in the night sky. The hot, moist air is so thick, it can be cut with a knife. It is laden with the scent of axle grease, but behind that rose the smell of cinnamon buns. Rushing down the street, 6 large hover drones pursue Rosa. She knows they are video recording her movements. She hopes they do not kill or tag her with trackers. Over speakers from the drones, the police call for her to stop and place her hands above her head. She screams as they fire at her. Bullets burst in patterns and send gravel up around her feet. Heart pounding, she jumps out of the way into a small alley. In front of her, marches a large police robot.
Mierda!
Stars twinkle in the heavens, and Jane's eyes gaze upon them. As she stares out at the night sky from her police office building, the lieutenant ponders the case while waiting for the lab results.
Damn! CSI takes forever.
A beat officer and the captain approach Jane. She appears not to notice, but instead hums John Denver leaving on a jet plane. You ever get tired of hearing you're right? Jane glances over.
The only shock that would come was from hearing Karen say it. The wife never offers those words, and frankly, rarely needs to. It's shocking how on point she can be.
She turns back to face the captain.
What happened?
Jane's neck crinkles to the right, and her hand part her hair.
The Buckley case. There was someone else in that room, not just the wife. And this is where you impress me.
Jane nods to the captain. Ballistics attached a half-dozen shootings to the weapon. Going back a decade, I doubt the reporter is a hit woman.
She could be, but I would put it as highly unlikely.
A grin crossed her cheeks. The captain smiled back. There is more. He instructs and motions to the officer to finish the tale. The officer clears his throat and affirms. DNA analysis from that gum tape came back from the lab. A Gomez Tedeschi. The guy's got a clean record. Nothing on file. He does have gum trouble, though. The officer hands her a manila folder, and she cracks it open, staring at the police photo of someone who seems like a career criminal, but with the record of an upstanding citizen.
A squeaky clean murderer? That's rare. Even my nephew's got priors. Either he's lived the life of a monk up until committing homicide, or
He's had a corporate wash. Jane licks her lips.
you think he's a professional?
Given the number of shootings linked to the gun and that only the big companies have the bankroll to control, alt-delete someone's criminal history, he's got a driver's license registered to a vehicle in Atlanta.
Well, this'll make a good story to tell the wife. Might even get me out of the doghouse for working late. Never marry, kid.
She offers her words of wisdom to the young beat officer. He looks at her skeptically. From the woman always talking about her wife. If you didn't have her to talk about, you probably only speak about a third of the time you do now. The captain's words called Jane out, and a long, sad sigh comes from Jane.
It is true. That I would. My life is dull.
A smile crossed her chops.
Employment history.
Bunch of part-time gigs. Shucking silkworm burgers or driving taxi drones, but if he's got ties, like you said, then that could have been faked.
What's the motivation to take out a reporter?
He knew something that got him killed. Reporters are killed to be kept quiet all the time. But what's it about? And that is the core question.
Guess we find out what he's been working on. I'm guessing his wife might have an idea. We have to get to her before our corporate friend does.
The mega smartphones beeps in rhythm for all of them. Damn, we got an alert. The wife is armed and hostile. The city has orders to shoot to kill.
No, this is crazy. Shoot to kill? Shoot to kill? What kind of town have we become?
The captain whistles long and low, then shakes his head. We need to have the order rescinded. She didn't kill her husband.
Like immediately?
On it. I'm trying to remove it now. He taps the keys on his phone. It's not accepting. The command code's on this one.
Maybe you could get the drone switched to tranquilizers. Not great, but better than dead.
I'm not getting anything on the command codes.
Maybe you've been hacked. I mean, you could have been hacked, right?
Jane shifts her head at a weird angle. I could be. I'll call the commissioner. You try to find the wife.
I have no idea where she could be.
You're in luck. Some TAC drones picked her up outside the Blue Quarters. Had a dozen or so doing a roving watch. My guess is she's hunkered down within a 5-block radius.
What was her name again?
Jane's eyes went unfocused. She raised her hand and rubbed her temples. Rosa Hernandez. Jane ponders the name. She tosses her hands in the air and shrugs.
Let's go get Rosa then.
Zigging and zagging, she barrels into the machine. Her bionic arm knocks it over, but the opposite reactive force pushes her into the wall. The machine rolls over and fires. The bullet sails across Rosa's ear. Blood trickles from it. She pivots down the alley. Behind her, its metallic legs crunch on the asphalt ground. Rosa sees a school playground in front of her. Her heart leaps with desperation. Maybe she can get there. She spins down its alley and quickly climbs the fence. The robot continues, and she knows if she does not make it over the fence before it turns the bend, she will be executed. Flipping over the fence top, she catches sight of a dumpster and jumps into it. Its lid flaps down, and she holds her breath. She realizes the school would have no way to support her. She ponders where else to go. Outside the grid of the robotic legs echoes through the air. Its booster rockets easily allow it to clear the fence. The sound grows closer and closer to the dumpster. Rosa's heart pounds. The blood flows through her veins and pounds in her brain, causing her a headache. Fighting the panic, she waits. It feels like a lifetime has passed. Her heart pounds. Sweat drips over her face and mixes with the trash. The smell is awful. But she bears it and waits. The mechanical head of the robot rotates, and then it marches off. The jetpack lifts it over the wall at the other end of the school fence. 10 minutes later, Rosa emerges from the dumpster and staggers to the fence. Jumping back over, she heads down the street to where she knows the old abandoned factory district is. Figuring this would be the best place to hide, she tries to keep to the darkest streets. Exhausted and visibly shaken, Rosa is pinned down. She can't move out into the open sky because above her flew tactical drones. Their constant buzzing reminds her that she is only one misstep away from being spotted. In the distance, the grind of mechanical gears from the searching police's sleek, metallic robot limbs jostles on the ground. She hums to herself. The Stooges' "I Want to Be Your Dog." The anthem is the only thing giving her hope. Her lips open, but nothing comes out. With a breath, she returns to humming. As air raid sirens, used to signal a prisoner on the run, echo through the city, she finds a temporary hideout inside an old abandoned warehouse. The words J&P Meatpacking Company fades in white paint against the crumbling red brick walls. The air smells foul, like a mix of rust, dust, and mold. A pipe drips from the ceiling, making a tiny splash every few minutes. From the cross-stitch of boards that line the broken lattice of windows, lights from passing drones light the center of the room as they pass outside. Crying, she holds tight to the walls and deep in the shadows. Briefly, her mind wonders if this is a hit and maybe Michael's killer is still out there searching for her. She is a loose end that needs to be tied up. With not being able to go to the police, the situation is doubly grave. She longs for a craft of red wine. In the distance, police squad cars roared down the street. The sound echoed through the factory walls. It'd only be a matter of moments before their street sweeping brought them to the front door. The drip from the pipe grew maddening, and Rosa drums her human fingers on her pants to the tune of the Stooges to ward off the madness, and draws tighter to the metal rivets embedded in the wall. She closes her eyes to steady herself. Her whole body is thirsty, and her lips are dry and cracked.
I'm not going to be caught here like a sitting duck.
She opens her eyes and puts her hands to her head and presses. Her plan is simple. Get to the harbors in the south and pay off a fisherman for safe passage. Back on the mainland, she'd turn herself in. Surely, she'd get a fair trial there. Once they'd seen the tape, they'd know her innocence. Now, she just needed a way to escape, something to avoid the drones, and get to the harbor. Michael's love had always been her source of salvation, but now it was her flood of pain, despair, guilt, and anger. Her mind wondered repeatedly what she could have done to save him. Surely, something could have changed this matter. Part of her hated herself, but the stronger part of her hated this society with no tolerance to hear her version of events. Society just presumes she is a bad person and guilty. In her heart, Rosa knows this is insane. She loved Michael. And the thing Michael always loved is this country. It wasn't perfect in his eyes, but it was always working to improve itself. Through his love and trust in this nation, she'd let her guard down and learned to trust it. Now, it threatened to kill her without mercy or even opportunity to present the truth. This isn't fair, of course. If the world is fair, the love of her life would be holding her tight right now on their second honeymoon after having made love until both were spent a dozen times over, and she'd fallen into a deep, restful sleep dreaming of San Juan. Her eyes drop, and the woman sees the rip on her black stockings running across her right thigh. She wonders if an old-school trick like the one she is thinking about would ever work. Michael told her a story of hookers in Singapore who were able to escape that island by an underground network of houses and ties to the local fishermen. The story is crazy, but she has nothing else.
Crazy enough to work.
She rips another gash into her left stocking to match. She takes off her jacket, revealing just a t-shirt, and wraps it around her waist. Taking both hands to her hair, she raises her hawk. A cold cunning blazes in her once gentle eyes.
Any word on retracting the kill order?
Jane calls into her radio as her electric car speeds down the street. Her blaring siren rests on top. She speeds past dancing holograms, advertising products all around. The bright neon lights glow out through the huge windows of the CBD cannabis shops. Scores of people inside get high, but she does not see Rosa. That's a negative. The SMI strip sizzles with street food, blue lights, echoing voices, and roars with motorbikes, but no Rosa. Several people huddle around a virtual kiosk, speaking for free to loved ones in distant places. Still, no Rosa. Static, and then the crisp voice of her captain.
Were the computer boys able to find anything out by looking at the killer's accounts?
The car bounces and shakes, and it dances through the pothole-filled streets. Jane taps on her computer console in the car to probe the town's databases. The order is still there, and she is helpless to do anything about it. No. If he received any payments, they were either in cash or in some cryptocurrency account.
Long shot with all the scramblers. And the Rosa chick has probably tossed it. But if you get me her cell phone, I might be able to track her phone location.
Soft blues echo from an old club at the corner. A neon arch projected from its doorway. Outside, an array of hookers and johns gather under the pale neon red glow, which announces the inside band. Several heroin users lay peppering the pavement. Even from a distance, the stench of their filth crinkles the nose. Had things been different growing up, Rosa worries. She could have been one of those on the street before. Hell, even now, she bears the stench of the trash bins. So it is not hard to imagine. She feels blessed to have had Michael with her all these years. They had kept each other on the straight and narrow. Now, he is dead, but her heart flutters. She has to keep him the present. The future will need to take care of itself, or so she needs to believe. Occasionally, bursts of heat, lightning flashes in the sky. The pale white silk shirts of the casual-looking men reflect red under the vibrant glow, and the low-cut dresses of several of the ladies, and want-to-be ladies, sent waves of ruffles in the light. One of the girls, she could easily be just a teen, does a quick dance in front of a man, just enough to give him a peek at her shaking butt. Her hand falls on his stomach and gives a gentle tease, and she brings her fingers up to the belly button. Something doesn't quite feel right. Some distant and worried part of her pleads to change this course of action. The scene, some 130 feet ahead, felt deeply wrong. Worse still, anything could happen on the trip. Standing under an old awning, Rosa starts forward, then loses her nerve. She backs up and pivots away, but the sound of a distant siren makes her reassess. If only she knew where the local punk scene is. She could go and blend in, see if she could crash at some kid's place. After, it'd be a quick call to some friends to pick her up, but she does not know SMI's scene. The woman mumbles in broken Spanglish, and then joins the lineup of men, androids, and women, hooking on the corner. Hell, there are even a few androids in the mix, sent to earn a paycheck for their owner. Hell, the strip seems to cater to the worst kind of kink, and she catches sight of a hooker and a dog. Forcing down the revulsion, she begins to mingle. It isn't long before a black limousine rolls up to the curb, its tinted windows lowering slightly.
You, the blonde, get over here.
Overhead, drones circle. Their blades slice through the air, and the whir sends a chill up Rosa's spine. They seek her as well. She has no friends in this scenario.
Hey, are you deaf? I said, get over here.
For a nanosecond, nothing happens. Rosa sucks in a deep breath and takes a step out into the open, strutting to the car with her best stripper walk. She has spent enough time catching the L trains back home to mimic the working girls to a T. One of the former H-squid, now plain heroin users, reaches out and grabs the base of her ankle. "Lady, could you spare?"
No!
She kicks the man. He humps and his hand flies off her leg. The door opens and Rosa crawls inside the limo. She hopes this entire encounter is some weird drug-induced hallucination, or maybe some byproduct of the trauma of losing her love. Her mind races at her poor choice of cover. But she felt desperate, and this was the first thing that seemed even remotely feasible. Inside the limo, Rosa sits across from a middle-aged businesswoman with jet black hair and an immaculately tailored ivory from head to toe. Even the sparkling diamond engagement ring. Access to the best tailors can sure make a piece of shit sparkle, Rosa thinks, but then realizes that this woman is her ticket out of here, so decides to reserve her judgment until she is in the clear. She doesn't want anything affecting her performance.
You're judging me. That will be extra lashes. My family has never married for love. We marry for connections. It's a sad existence. Don't worry about the lashes. They will be painful, but from the look in your eyes, I can see you have taken much worse.
The businesswoman cups Rosa's cheek and then caresses it softly. Something about the woman's touch and voice excites Rosa, and she feels weird about it. Rosa needed to put her game face on. No love to lose between hookers and Johns, she reminds herself. It is all just entertainment, and she understood that industry. She purrs at the word lashes and adds,
But a sad existence makes a great excuse to go slumming.
Rosa feels bad for the woman, especially for what she is about to do. But hell, she knew this woman less than a minute, and this rich trash was already speaking of beating her. The woman caresses her cheek.
Don't worry. It won't be too bad. Just a few hanger lashes across the bottom of your feet, and then... we shall see.
Normally, a front kick to the face would have been Rosa's standard protocol, rendering the woman unconscious. It would be the safest and most effective maneuver, but for some reason, Rosa feels an iota of pity for this woman. Maybe it is the sad, empty, resigned look on her face, or the jewels that dazzle, despite the woman looking so dark and forlorn.
Listen, I was actually going to kick you in the face and hijack this vehicle, but instead, you're going to get your chauffeur to take me to the Southside Harbor. I can't pay you, but I won't forget your help.
The rich businesswoman chuckles, her head tilts, and her eyes gleam.
I do have the tendency to pick up the belligerent ones.
She shakes her head in a way that makes Rosa feel a bit queasy. Can she take this woman? The woman's voice grows oddly soft as she says,
So, you're going to do nothing for me, and yet I'm supposed to help you out, supposedly from the kindness of my own heart. I was kind of hoping you'd take into account that I never kicked you in the face. No, I appreciate that sentiment, but I need much more. Maybe I drop you where you want to go after you treat me right.
Rosa's eyes harden, and she notices the goon-like chauffeur in the limo's front. The woman takes out a triangular pointed double-edged tungsten carbide blade. Its hilt rests between her fingers. Quickly, scanning, Rosa sees the woman carrying a gun strapped to her leg.
I like it when my pets play games, but remember, I do have the home court advantage on this one, sweetie.
Terror rises in Rosa as the chauffeur rolls the glass up between the front and the back. She gulps as the woman presses a button and locks the doors. The car rolls. As soon as the car moves, its glass shatters as a hail of bullets tear up the vehicle. Through the divider, Rosa sees the chauffeur's body flail as bullets chew up the poor man's torso. Rosa dives down for cover. The car door opens, and the businesswoman takes a bullet to the head for her troubles. Rosa is caught dead to rights. She can't bail from the vehicle. No time. She can only watch in chilled horror as she comes face to face with the man who killed her husband and now is about to kill her. Time seems to stop. Frozen, she watches as the hitman raises a small sniper rifle coated in black plastic. A Russian design from the last decade. Rosa appears ill and closes her eyes. No way out. The woman knows this is the last thing she'd see. Her life flashes before her eyes, and she regrets never having had children with Michael. They both always believed there would be time later. Now, later has passed for both of them. Her heart pounds and hears the electrical crackling of a stun round. Rosa opens her eyes and sees the hitman convulsing on the electrical charge courses through his body. The teeth of the round plunge directly into his neck. Hell of a way to get stunned, she thinks on relief. A female police officer raises a gold badge into the vehicle.
Police, let me see your hands.
Flinching, every instinct commanded Rosa to flee, but the woman's weapon was not pointed at her. Instead, she fought instinct and resolved to take a risk.
I have this video, please. Look. My husband.
Rosa stops and sobs. The officer runs to the convulsing man and cuffs him. Waltzing to Rosa, Jane takes the smartphone and glances at the video. She nods. Then she moves over and placed a hand on Rosa's shoulder. Rosa fell in her arms, crying.
It's okay. We know you didn't do it.
I want a lawyer. The hitman screams as he spits up blood. Rosa watches as Lieutenant Uprose yanks up the hitman's body. She is impressed by the small police officer. Alive and well by Rise Against plays in her head. It is her acknowledgement that she is still standing and the hitman is down. No, I'm already dead. Please, kill me. If the corporation finds out, then they'll do worse to me than what you've done today. Kill me and make sure my body isn't found.
You are going to tell us everything you know.
Lieutenant Uprose wipes the blood from her hands onto her jeans. Rosa never saw cops like this. People who care. Once the law was outsourced by the big economy, as happened in the early 2030s, most of its freelancers were just thugs collecting a check, if not on the payroll of some corporation to look the other way. Rosa is surprised with how much the lieutenant cared.
We are going to get some answers.
What are you suggesting?
A grin crosses Rosa's face. Jane's neck twitches, and she flings her head to an awkward side position, and the lieutenant lets out a small laugh.
We need to trace down the person who hired the hitman. Maybe find your husband's source and get the truth out.
She is not sure if they are joy, relief, or just another bout of grief.
How?
The word catches in her throat and is barely above a whisper.
We need to take a trip to Atlanta. We can start with the leads your husband gave in the video. We're gonna locate this researcher and figure out what exactly he's done, and if there's any way to reverse it. We need to know what they're planning next.
Rosa gazes at her own hands. There is blood on them now, too. She is involved in this, like Michael. Like Lieutenant Uprose, she isn't going to let the people responsible for this get away. The three started toward the patrol car.
When do we leave?
Her voice is dreamy and is buffered by a plea for vengeance. Indeed, she is ready to go, but at that moment, a stuccoing of a drone announces its presence. The police hover's downward movement is slow and subtle. A red dot falls over Rosa's chest. With an expression of shock on her face, Rosa reaches out to grab Jane's hand, but the lieutenant draws her weapon and badge to command the machine to stop. But the machine has the jump. It fires, and a hail of bullets strike Rosa. They tear through her flesh. Blood splatters out. The crimson pattern bathing Jane. Rosa's body dies before it hits the ground. Jane cries.
No!
She bends over the broken figure. The hitman laughs. but the next round of fire strikes him. Thank you for listening to Atlanta Vigilante Wars, Case 003, 6 Mile Island. Script by Joseph and Marisha Cautilli. Based on a short story novella by Joseph Cautilli, Marisha Cautilli, and Peter Kim. Director and producer, Roma Gray. Executive producer credits, Marisha and Joseph Cautilli. Narrated by Joshua Banks and Shanalee Carton.